All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for joining the Fulbright Journey session today. My name is Anasak Burley, and I'm an Education USA advisor at our Islamabad office. A very special thanks to our speaker today, Momina Mindeel, for joining us and sharing what her Fulbright experience and journey has been like. We're really delighted to have her with us. Before I introduce Momina, formally introduce Momina, I would like to take a moment to share about who we are and what we do. So Education USA is a global network under the US Department of State, comprising over 425 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries. We are your official source of US higher education. In Pakistan, Education USA is based at the United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, which also hosts the Fulbright Commission in the country. USEFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange with offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi. Other than advising, USEFP also has a programs department that administers multiple fully funded programs, including the Fulbright scholarship and degree programs that Momina and I will get to shortly. You can find all of this information on our website, www.uscfp.org. And finally, along with the programs department, USCFP also has authorized metric testing centers in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. Just a small reminder that the 2025 Fulbright Scholarship Program is also open for Pakistani applicants. Please keep in mind that the application deadline for this cycle is February 28th, 2024. So a little bit about our speaker, Momina Mindeel. Momina is a writer, editor, and media development practitioner with over 7 years of work experience in journalism, editorial innovation, media training, and research. She has trained over 600 journalists on countering disinformation and hate speech in the past 3 years. And she graduated with a master's in innovation in journalism, Studio 20 Digital First, from New York University as a Fulbright Scholar in 2020. While in New York, she specialized in audience-centric research and reporting and was involved in usability testing, audience engagement, media sustainability and viability, and diversification of revenue streams for journalistic outlets. She frequently writes about culture or subculture and digital spaces. Now, without any further ado, I think it would be appropriate to begin our session. Once again, if you guys have any sort of questions, please use the Q&A chat box feature. And once we're done with the session, Momina and I will take your questions. So thank you so much, Momina, for joining us today. I think just to start this conversation, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about, yourself before you applied for the Fulbright program. How did you come to know about this particular scholarship program? And what was the experience like for you when you were applying for the Fulbright degree program? Momina, I think you were mute. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. 3, 4, 5 years into the pandemic, we're still on your mute. Anyway, I just realized I'm wearing my NYU hoodie, which feels very obnoxious. That's why I was just trying to hide it, but just to put it out there. So before I applied for the Fulbright program, I was actually venturing into a lot of, I think, niches when it comes to the media industry. I was, my first job was with a digital media news outlet where I was producing, I was acting, I was doing a lot of stuff. Then, my second job was about storytelling. My third job was also a media startup. So I feel like I was venturing into a lot of things, and that had me a little confused. But I think one thing that was consistent in all of that was I was sort of experimenting with a lot of like various formats for storytelling, video ho gayi, written ho gaya, like it was just a lot of that. And once I started writing my personal statement and my study objectives for Fulbright, that's when I realized कि ये सारी चीजें जो हैं, in a way, they are all sort of aligning in my favor. But before that, I just did not know what I was doing. I was just, like I said, बहुत ज़्यादा चीजों में मैं जा रही थी media development. And I think master's program jo tha, academics in general, they sort of ground me. And I think all of that like culminated into my personal statement, into my study objectives, and I realized, acha, if I write about it chronologically, it makes sense. Everything that I've done makes sense, and I think that was where I was at in a way. मैं थोड़ी confused थी अपने professional उसमें. But I think Fulbright in a way and that master's degree sort of like just brought it all together in a very consolidated way. So that was really nice. Um, and how I came to know about Fulbright, I think applying for Fulbright is a rite of passage for most Pakistani students. जब भी हमें masters का पता चलता है, as soon as you find out that masters is a thing, Fulbright is that one thing that comes up. So a lot of my friends, a lot of my seniors, a lot of people from my batch were already on Fulbright when I was applying. But before I applied for the Fulbright, I was trying independently as well for some reason. But I guess once you are in that process of applying, you realize that Fulbright, like just the way it is structured financially as well, and also like after you come back, I saw a lot of people were still, like
I think we have lost you, Momina.
seemed very attractive and appealing, and I
I'm
think
so
that's how
sorry.
I, just went in for it.
Could you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we just lost you for a second. Okay, it's fine now. Sorry about that.
That's all
All
right.
right.
Was it from
Yeah.
my end?
Yeah. I think we just lost you for the last bit.
Do you want me to repeat it? I don't remember what I said.
It's totally fine. I'll just get to the next question if that's okay with you. Yeah, I was also wondering, and a lot of students when they are applying for the Fulbright degree program, even when we apply for independent applications, the first thing that we usually tell our students is to always set up some sort of goals or priorities when you're applying for that. And I think that sort of aspect is really important, especially when you're applying for the Fulbright degree program, because it has a lot to do with what you really want to achieve as a scholar. So what were some of your goals when you were, when you were applying, when you got selected for the scholarship program? And, were you able to achieve all of those goals that you had in mind or a portion of those? Tell us a bit about a bit about, how you were able to set your priorities, how you were able to meet those priorities and goals while you were studying in the United States and NYU?
Okay. Like I mentioned, I think मैं बहुत ज़्यादा, like I was all over the place professionally. I was like, I had my foot in like multiple things, चाहे वो storytelling है या, it's video journalism, or it was just a lot of things going on. But I think one thing at the back of my head that I knew was I was enjoying experimenting with newer forms of storytelling, just incorporating maybe just gamification of storytelling, just a lot of these things. I just wanted to explore newer ways of telling stories, and I think that was one of my goals essentially when I sat down to write my personal statement or my study objectives. मेरे ज़हन में था कि this is one thing that I need to focus on. That this is one thing that makes sense in my professional career right now. That's all over the place. So I think that was like my starting point. मैंने वहां से शुरू किया, just like understanding what programs would help me do that. And then I sort of have lived the first few years of my life in like a village in a rural town, and just when I was working at my first job, I realized that a lot of the writing that I was doing, or a lot of audience that we were reaching, were very urban. And you sort of like coming from, even though honestly, like I will not oversell it.
I'm so sorry, Momina. I think we lost you again. Could you hear us?
बिल्कुल
Can you hear us?
certain तरह की audience को सिर्फ आप target कर रहे हैं. So I think unknowingly and without having a term for it, I wanted to do something in media development and something that would help me better journalism, or make it more sustainable or more accessible for people in like remote areas or far-flung areas. So I think those sort of that वो एक चीज थी, वो जो मेरा एक गोल बन गया, एक research interest बन गया. So I think ये दो तीन चीजें थी that sort of set the basis for my statements or the programs that I found. And then of course when I went there, it's a very funny thing. I think when I got there, I realized my program was very different from what I thought it would be. I thought it would be about, like web journalism and digital journalism. But it was very different. It was mostly about making journalism sustainable, finding new ways to innovate, to create more revenue streams for journalistic outlets. But at the same time, we had a lot of writing and research projects as well. The program was structured very nicely. It was a very small class, 15 people. All our classes for the first semester were together, and for the next 2 semesters, we had at least one or two classes together. So, we were a very well knit group. And it was a very, very international class. Like we had around 30 nationalities, and it was structured in a way that we were for 2 semesters we were working with the Financial Times, and we were working with actual media outlets. We're pitching our stories to actual media outlets. So just the way it was structured, it was very professional degree. I think it was less theory based and more, more practical. And I enjoy that, like I love reading and writing and applying theories to my papers. But I think that was a breath of fresh air, because I was just, it's very hands on. You were आपको reward जो आप काम कर रहे हो उसको उसी वक्त in real time you can see the reward. So I think I really, really enjoyed that. And that sort of, उसने मुझे terminology दी, फिर उसने मुझे vocabulary दी, मुझे nomenclature मिली कि media development क्या होता है. And so when I came back, I wouldn't say, of course, I didn't achieve or my goals the way I envisioned them to. When I came back, I really wanted to teach. I wanted to teach a course on media sustainability and viability. For some reason, I have not been able to do it, but I think I've been able to do that in other ways and forms. As soon as I came back, I think 2 months into my return, I found a job in media development, and I work with a lot of journalists, again, from, like far-flung areas as well, from remote areas. So I train journalists across the country on countering disinformation, hate speech, and just, bettering their writing and all of that. So I think that really helped me. I also created a course that is free to use for citizens, for journalists alike, on how to counter misinformation and disinformation online. What is social media news gathering and stuff like that. So I think in a way that that need or desire that I had for teaching was sort of quenched by that, if we must. And then, like I realized, yes, I like writing a lot, but at the same time, this journalism adjacent field, which is media development, is more up my alley, because I like, and then I also mentored a lot of local publications on how they can, increase their audience, and just helping them come up with new techniques for audience engagement, community engagement, and stuff like that. So I think that whole process of innovation, media sustainability, that has become my primary interest. And so it's like series of events. मेरे ज़हन में बिल्कुल और तरह की चीज थी. Oh, I want to work, for rural journalists fully and completely. But then over time you realize that these are they're tangible goals, but in a way they're also intangible. You're one person, you can do only so much. So you find your niche and you try to, work through all of that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, of course. And I think it's great that you've kind of touched upon the importance of a professional degree. And because, a lot of people, especially in Pakistan, they hesitate to, sort of see or bridge that gap between the classroom and, the field work that they would like to conduct. And I think it's great that you've touched upon that idea of the importance essentially of doing a professional degree, and how that sort of helps you out with, not just your academic goals, but your personal goals, your professional goals as well. So it's great that you've touched upon that. A very similar question. So you might have come across some sort of like ups and downs, while you were in New York, during your Fulbright journey. So it'd be great if you could share one for each moment. One time where you felt that, that was a really difficult moment for you while you were studying in New York, and one time where you felt that, this is something that was a great achievement for you while you were there.
I think they're a little abstract, perhaps. I think one maybe not so abstract down downward part of the whole thing was I got COVID there, and it was pretty bad, and I was in and out of hospitals for a long time, and I had to come back early and wrap up, my day from here. So I think that part, that is not something you account for, or that is not something you have prepared for, and just navigating the healthcare system in the US is sort of a big thing, I guess. So I think that was I would say, like, that's something that stands out, was you could say, like, a down moment of the Fulbright journey. You were away from friends, family, and all of that. But I think the good part, essentially, definitely for me, was the friendships and just the community overall. Like I said, my class was very close knit, and I think that really helped me. I think that's very important when you're figuring out what kind of program you want to apply for. Do you want to go into a program that they where you have a lot more freedom in a way that you can take as many classes as you like, or whatever classes you like? But then I feel like it probably makes it harder to interact with um, your classmates, because you only have limited energy, you only have limited time. But I think that really helped me. I'm the kind of person who thrives in smaller settings and smaller groups. So I think that really was one of the things that I cherish the most, because then you make rituals, then you have traditions with your class fellows. So I think that was definitely one of the like the cherished moments. And at the same time, the couple of writing classes I took, one was writing personal essay, and one was covering the food world in a way that is more centered in you. I think that's what I really enjoyed. I've always been a writer in a way, but that sort of lent a lot of legitimacy to how I look at myself as a writer. And like my I remember in my food class, a professor asked me to once read out my essay because he said it was one of the best. So those sort of things, they really give you a lot of, even though you're confident in yourself, but that sort of like lends legitimacy to how you look at yourself and how people look at yourself. So I think the writing classes for sure, and the community, the close knit classes and the close knit circle in my grad school, those were definitely like the highlights, the cherished moments.
Thank you so much for that, for the insights, Momina. And what sort of cultural or academic or professional or personal experiences of studying and being in the United States do you cherish the most? I know you've kind of talked about your classroom experience, but just the idea of living in the United States. I mean, were there any sort of cultural shocks did you feel while you were there in the US? What sort of lessons did you learn as a person while you were studying in New York as a Fulbright scholar? Maybe outside of the classroom, or in the classroom, what sort of ideals or beliefs that you think impacted you in a way that has sort of changed you personally
I,
and academically?
before I left, I remember I had a flatmate who was on Fulbright like a year before, and she used to keep telling me that whatever you're doing right now, it's great and all, but once you go there, your worldview is going to change, or you're going to be challenged a lot. And of course, like logically and rationally, it made sense, but it doesn't hit you until you were there. And so I think one thing, I thought I was very resilient as a person, and I can easily adapt to things. But I think the first 10 days in New York, it's a very big city. Nobody really, you're just very invisible there. And I honestly wasn't used to that. I think in Pakistan, we're very like the country is very like, our social fabric is such that you're very community centered, and even if we want to be independent and branch out, you're just very like entrenched in that system. So I think that was a shock for sure. But we grow up watching American shows, American TV, so culturally as such, it wasn't that like different. You've seen 100 movies about New York and all of that. But that particular thing, I think one thing that very initially, very early on, I learned that like, of course I'm resilient and all, but that was such a hard transition. I think nobody really tells you that as such. Everybody's talking about, oh, what you need to do, and once you get there, housing and stuff like that. But I think that particular thing, that feeling of mentioned that to me, or it never just came up. So I think that was like, I would cry every day. That was such a weird thing for me. But I think that was one thing that really caught me by surprise. But the best thing was that I had a very, very close friend. Actually, one of my best friends, she joined me there. She was also on the Fulbright and she was placed at Columbia. So that just worked out for me in a way. So I think that really changed my whole Fulbright experience. We traveled together, we did everything together. And of course, we had our own circles and stuff, but I think that really centered me and grounded me. Um, I think that was great. Traveling was also just being around in the US. It's very easy to navigate. Everything is just online. You can just, just navigating the country in general was great. 7 months of my degree were in the pandemic. So even, like I had a friend's wedding that I really wanted to attend, that I thought, quote unquote, would be like the very American experience in a way. I was in the bridal party, or however you, whatever you call it, but that didn't happen, of course. So a lot of it was in a way overshadowed by the pandemic. But it was nice. But I feel like I am the kind of person who observes more, and like my comfort lies in being an observer and less participant sometimes, I guess. So I think that, but like, so because of the pandemic, I became more of an observer. But it was nice just to see how the society is structured, just like I like, I developed a podcast with some of my friends, and then we sort of like, drew parallels between our part of the world and that part of the world, and how capitalism is entrenched in their society and in our society. Just, like finding overlaps in that, how Valentine's Day for us becomes a thing of rebellion, right? We want to just like be like, oh, you can't stop us. Yes, of course, we're gonna show our love or whatever. But there, it's more rooted in capitalism. So just, figuring all of that out. That was interesting. I think to me that's the most interesting part, because I'm a writer. That goes a lot. That, that is who I am in a way. So essentially, I think jaise aap ho, the kind of experiences that you do or attract or undertake or go through have a lot to do with who you are and what you are, interested in, or what appeals you, if that makes sense. Hopefully I've covered everything. I
Yes,
feel like my
definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. And also just the idea that I think in the United States, while I was in New York, the idea of networking is such an important and integral aspect that's not really the case here in Pakistan when I was doing my undergrad. When I went to do my master's in the US, I think a lot of it is reliant on like the network that you build. So, the kind of work that you're getting, the kind of, academics, or, the kind of classes that you take, it all relies a lot on like networking and building, some relationships with your professors, with your classmates. And so just on that, how important do you think? And I think a lot of people, sorry for that, I think a lot of people also, when they are applying to the United States, I think one of the most integral aspects that they think about is the aspect of networking and the whole, they have alumni networks, they have, people supporting donors and stuff like that. So, how important do you think it is to build, connections or to network while you were in the United States? How did you work on that? And, were those relationships or those academic networks, were they able to help you out with anything?
Yeah. I think, to be perfectly candid here, this is one thing, that was running joke between my class fellows and I, that grad school essentially, like, just for instance, my journalism पढ़ने गई हूँ, innovation पढ़ने गई हूँ. Of course, I'm learning a lot, but at the same time, these are some things that you can also, in a way, learn on the job while being on the field, right? And then we would talk about how grad school is mostly just networking, essentially. Like, I understand for STEM degrees, it's slightly different, but I think personally for me, in my experience, it was a lot of networking. It was a lot of the people that I was meeting or I was interacting with or I was being exposed to. And I think that is very important, specifically if you are in a field that relies on, for instance, journalism. I have to have sources. I have to be able to talk to people. I have to have experts in mind. And I think for me personally, that really, really helped. Um, so my first job after I came back from the US was in media development, and there was like a project that I was undertaking. It was a 2-year long project, and it was essentially funded by the US consulate in Karachi. And so we had to have like a lot of American experts for, I work, and we had to get American experts on board to help create like misinformation beats in newsrooms, right? So we want it to become a beat because of how widespread it is in Pakistani newsrooms. And I think my networking that I did in the US helped to a great degree. So बाकी जो programs थे अगर उसमें भी हमें कोई expert चाहिए, and they don't necessarily have to be American, they would just come up to me and be like, you have to find them. And then I had like my groups, मेरा grad school का एक group है, एक मेरा class fellows का एक बाकी उनके साथ है, like other people from school, and just there's Facebook groups, there's WhatsApp groups, and you just write whatever you need, and then it's almost guaranteed that somebody would reach out to you. And it was just like that made my life so much easier, and then I knew exactly who to reach out to. And even if I didn't, I knew I could reach out to someone who would tell me what people I could reach out to, right? So I think that really, really helped. Currently, I recently got a gig that was also through, one of my professors. He sort of, I didn't think he would remember me, but he did. And somebody reached out to him. They wanted somebody to, work on a particular specific thing. And 2 years later, he reaches out to me and he says, something tells me that you will be an ideal candidate for it. And, he connected me um, to the person, to the relevant person. So it's just, it has been really, really helpful. And I think the program being so small, then professors easily remember you, I guess, then because, आप consistently उनके साथ काम कर रहे हो. And, I feel like I keep bringing it up, but I think I can't emphasize enough on that कि आप जब भी जिस भी program के लिए apply करो, it's so important to remember and realize कि किस तरह का structure will work for your personality or with the kind of things you want to do after you come back or your master's degree. Like some people want bigger programs because they want the freedom to choose courses, but some people like smaller. So I feel like that's very, very important. That came in handy a lot. So I think networking really helped me in that way. Of course, baki jo hai, a lot of newsletters that I currently subscribe to, a lot of journalists that I currently subscribe to, the way my Twitter feed is curated, the way my social media is curated has come a lot from the kind of people I met and the kind of conversations that we had. तो उसमें आप pick and choose करते हो ये चीज मेरे लिए, this thing interests me, this might help me out. And I think so that really helps you. That like sort of sets you up for whatever you need to do in the future, because there's just so much to do and there's so many people to meet, and especially in the US, these universities they have career fairs every few months, and you have guest speakers coming in. So I feel like it's such a great way to sort of make connections, and to just, even if you don't want to stay in touch, you just somehow end up staying in touch. So I think that really, really just sort of helped me out. And now that I've gone freelance, these connections really work and help me, because I can just rely on them to find gigs for myself and to continue building the brand that I want to build for myself in a way.
Yes, I definitely agree. Because it's sort of like networking is also a great source of knowledge and knowledge sharing, essentially, because you then rely on those people to help you out with certain things. I mean, similarly, I was also working with a professor, and they were able to help me out with some archives that I was trying to find very recently. So that helped a lot, and it's always great to just have this community of academics and professors who are always just there to help you out. And I think that's the beauty of studying in the United States, that everybody's just so helpful.
It's true. They are very helpful.
And they get super happy too when you reach out to them. It's always like a pleasure when they're always like so happy when you are like reconnecting, and they're always like, oh, it's so great, it's nice. It's a very wholesome feeling.
Like my professor reached out to me, I was just like, I didn't think you would even remember me, but of course they do. And I can be the kind of person who sometimes like, I withdraw or retract into myself. But I feel like because I networked a lot back then, even though I think I didn't do half as much networking as some of the other people did, but it's just like ना चाहते हुए भी आपकी networking हो रही है, because you're meeting so many people on everyday basis. And it just, there's at least one person you will connect with, or jinki, you're like, oh, this person out of nowhere in the world is doing or is interested in exactly the same things as I am, right? And that is like a good sort of validation that you get from the whole networking experience as well, I think.
For sure, for sure. And they sort of also help you out with your application material sometimes. Like when you want to apply for a job, for grad school, for postdoctorate or PhD programs, they're always willing to, and they're really happy to always write a letter for you, which is always so helpful.
I feel like that's what I'm struggling with right now. Who to reach out to ask for recommendation
Yeah,
letters for a PhD program, for a second master's. But I think they're always, I think they always remember you. One thing that grad school has taught me, I guess. I think undergrad इतना थोड़ा depersonalized सा experience होता है, and then everybody is just, you don't realize it then. But I think grad school is like a whole different game altogether, perhaps.
definitely for sure. And Momina, you sort of your experience as a storyteller and somebody who's always liked experimenting with with different fields altogether, like academic fields, disciplines. Before you were applying for Fulbright, while you were in New York as a Fulbright scholar, you've been a storyteller. You've worked with different fields, disciplines. So, how important do you think it is to study and major in an unconventional and sort of like a transdisciplinary degree programs such as innovation in journalism, and especially for Pakistani students and applicants, because I think the idea of transdisciplinary curriculum, digital humanities, that is something that's still very new to Pakistani applicants. So, how important do you think it is to study that? How important do you think it is to study that and then work in a field such as journalism or work in a journalistic capacity? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think honestly, I understand why it's still new, a concept here, because of course, I feel like again, it goes back to the way our society is structured. Amaba, they're always telling us to do like that particular thing that just, like for instance, being a doctor is a safe thing, right? Being an engineer is a safe thing, not so much anymore, but you know what I mean, right? And like my parents, of course, they also wanted me to be a doctor at one point. There was this huge thing about, how I gave up on that and all that. So I understand, like I have friends even now, they're just like, a lot of it has to do with, the way they have to provide for their families. So they want to do something or major in something that's very safe, and like they know after they come back, there will be opportunities to find a job in and everything. So I understand it's a bit of a risk to sort of venture into something that you really like. I honestly think it is a privilege, for me personally as well, to be able to do that. But I think Fulbright is such a generous grant. And if there's one thing that you won't worry about while you're in the US, is the financials, I think, which I think is such a huge thing. Which I also saw some of my class fellows struggling who weren't on scholarships, and they're doing 3 jobs and all of that. So I see that. But I think Fulbright really, like, cushions you there while you're there. So you just focus on the work that you're doing. So just going back to your question, I think of course it is important if you like it, because then you will find things that perhaps another person won't be able to, because this is something that really really interests you. And when something really really interests you, you're not just looking at it as an academic discipline or as a degree that you have to do, go back and earn, right? Then you find newer ways of being, in a way. I know that's like a big statement, but you do find newer ways of being through that degree and through the work that you're doing or the studies that you're doing. So I think it's very very important, if you are like Fulbright, in a way, if you're going specifically through Fulbright, I think that can give you that courage and confidence in a way, because it will cushion you financially. You won't be it won't be a problem. And then you can, I feel like it is truly, for me personally, for my personal growth, for who I've become, and how I view work and how I view professions or professionalism overall. A lot has been defined by, because of the fact that I was able to study what I've always wanted to study. My undergrad was in a completely different thing. It was economics and political science. Economics, I don't even remember anything about it, but I was doing it because, of course, guarantee of. But I think जब मैं वापस आई तो I realized that there is a job for practically anything. Like once Of course, I understand for some people there is like a different way or a different trajectory that they want to follow financially and everything. But honestly, once you've studied like a niche thing or something that you've really been interested in, or like, like you said, an unusual track, you will find 100 other things to use it for, honestly. And I think that really helps, because आपने वो ऐसी चीज पढ़ी है जो कि आप अगर मैं इकोनॉमिक्स ही पढ़ने जाती दोबारा, तो मैं बिल्कुल एक पर्टिकुलर एक ब्लाइंडर्स लगा के एक ही चीज पढ़ के आती, फिर एक ही तरह की उसमें काम करती. नाउ आई कैन ब्रांच आउट, नाउ आई कैन राइट, I can be a media trainer, I can be a media researcher, I can help media startups with innovation in their revenue streams or in their editorial practices. So there's like 10 different things now I want to do. I can write fiction, I can write non-fiction, so like अब मैं 4-5 चीजों में I can also diversify like this my revenue streams as well. So I think that really helped. Studying something that was so niche and so like on brand for me personally. So I think it's essentially at the end of the day is going to be like a personal choice, like what it is that is the most important to you. But I think staying true to who you are and what you want to do. Again, yes, it is a privilege, but it is also going up. It is also going to open up a lot of avenues for you to explore and a lot of ways of being that you can adapt to and like just explore and experience and just be, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. I think it's great that opportunities like the Fulbright degree program, they sort of open you up to academic experiences that are like so interdisciplinary and diverse, to the point where, for instance, in your case, you were not only just doing journalism, but you were also learning about sustainability. And you could use that to maybe not just diversify the workplace, your workplace, but you could also diversify, your beliefs and your ideas that you hold dear to yourself.
100%. I think that's like when I say academics ground me, it has a lot to do with how they impact me as a person as well. Because for me, it is very hard for me to separate my academics with who I am. Like I can't just study something that doesn't resonate with me, or like. So I feel like when you start studying something that really embodies what you believe in or who you are, it's sort of like just these are like steps of evolution or that you go through, if for lack of a better word.
Yeah, definitely. And the growing need to turn to the interdisciplinary curriculum. I think that's Fulbright is doing a really good job introducing students to interdisciplinary fields and disciplines, and just the
And
idea that you need to take into account very different perspectives to approach a certain field, if
yeah.
if you were to put it that way. So yeah, that's definitely great. So how has overall, how has the Fulbright experience, changed you, personally, academically, and professionally?
um okay, let's see. Professionally, personally, and academically, I think honestly, just being in the US, I think one thing, again, being super candid, you become very hyper aware of your ethnicity or where you come from. And I think that has definitely just like you that otherness, of course, sometimes comes in the way, and it's very easy to internalize it, I think. um but I think working through that, realizing that just contextualizing who you are and how the whole world around you is operating, and like attitude towards you or your attitude towards them, I think just working through that process has really helped me, not just with that, just like all the other feelings of otherness that I had harbored inside of me for a long time, be it who I am and what I do and how I see the world. I've always felt a little different, just in the way of, I've always felt like I gravitate towards the harder path. So I think just Fulbright, sort of, just being there on your own, just on a daily basis, of course, the reflection karni pad rahi hai, because, you have to, because of course, despite all the good experiences that you've had, you can't really shield yourself from the color of your skin or from who you are or where you come from or how you're viewed in the world, right? So I think initially I think I internalized it a little bit, but then I just found like healthier ways of coping with it, and then that seeped into other aspects of my life as well. कि किस तरह से जब feelings of otherness आ रही है उसको किस तरह से आपने, you know, how you need to work through it, how you navigate it, how it's not always about you, just contextualizing yourself, or you know, that teaches you a lot of empathy as well, I think. And so I think personally wo cheezein jo hain, and then just community, building a community, really, like I've always, I feel like, which is a bit ironic because I know US is known for like a country because of the individualism, and but I think I actually learned like community building there when I was there, because like I said, I think because there are a lot of other people you realize when you look around are battling the same things that you are, because घर में आप काफी cushioned होते हो यहाँ पे, despite everything that we face in Pakistan, it's still at the end of the day it's familiar, and that's there, the only thing familiar is yourself at the end of the day, right? And then you sort of realize other people are also feeling this, and then just, you know, community building, finding people, relying on them. I think I've always struggled with relying on people, but you know, you realize that it's okay to rely on people every now and then. So I think that was personally, that's how I really just, you know, that really helped me out. Baki, professionally, I think again, just I think I was in like we make when it stump hit kar liya tha when it came to my writing, and when I was in the US and my personal essay class, you know, it was a very normal regular writing class, but I think the professor was one of the best I've had in my life. I would say the best professor I've had in my life. She really made me look at writing in a very different way. I think that was for me, I don't know how important that is for others. For me personally, that was a big breakthrough. You know, like I can center myself and then write about things. That just opened a whole new, you know, like set of things I could write about. And so I think the professionally and, you know, like academically, that really helped me. And you know, just like, you know, when a professor like that tells you that you have a strong expression, you should keep writing, whatever, I think that those things, they really help, just like, you know, center you and ground you in a way. So I think another course that I took was video journalism, and I never thought I could make videos, or I was the kind of person who had an eye for video storytelling. But you know, you realize these things about yourself when you're venturing into new things. And I think I did pretty great in that class as well. So I think these things just, you know, last thing I would say was just exploring the country on it was very like a lot of places like New York, for instance, was very like pedestrian friendly. And I think being a woman from Pakistan, I've always been labeled as like lazy, कि तुम hiking नहीं करती, तुम, you know, Momina gets tired easily, and you know, so that is something you grew up with and you internalize it, and you're like, okay, sure, I'm lazy, you know, you own it. But there, I think that's when I realized that it wasn't that I was lazy. It was just that I didn't feel safe enough to, you know, go. I feel like I'm a completely different person now. I go on hikes, I do different things, you know, just I feel like a lot of brown girls don't know how to swim. And I think this is also like because we don't have that kind of you know, swimming is such a regular normal thing. But I think बहुत सारी brown girls मैंने देखा उनको नहीं आती because of the way we live in the society, you know. And so I think those are some things that really open up your eyes to. These are very normal, regular things. और आपको होता है अच्छा ये तो मतलब आ ही जानी चाहिए बात समझ. But I think until you've lived it, you don't necessarily realize the burden that you're carrying, I guess. I don't know, वो काफी, if that makes sense. All of it makes sense in a way.
Yes, definitely. And New York can get a little brutal and cutthroat sometimes because they don't stop for anybody. Even when you're taking a train, they will just,
Sure. I
yes,
think initially
definitely.
I enjoyed it, just being lost in the city. But
Yeah,
now
it
I'm a
can,
different person.
yeah, it can definitely get a little daunting for sure. But yeah, I think it's also nice in a way because it teaches you to just carry yourself around and just
I,
be, yeah.
but I think if given an opportunity, I would probably now go to a smaller city where I can just be. But I think that's because of the changing personalities. And I think that's a lot of people who've you know, I have a friend who went to University of Missouri. And you know, that was like a college town. So her experiences are very different, but equally monumental. So you know, you sort of, I think that also Fulbright really helps with that as well, just getting you all together. Um, you know, once a year. I think that also really helps. You see how other people are living their life in the same in different parts of the same country. So it's a lot of things that you're being exposed to, which I liked, honestly. Just, taking it all in, sitting with it, observing. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think it's also very interesting that you mentioned the idea of, community building, especially in the US, where the idea of individualism is such a big factor. Their American dream, everything has to revolve around, individualism. Because even when I was working for my school center for civic engagement, community building, experiential learning, and civic engagement were such big themes that actually got a little like I was actually kind of shocked too because I was like, oh, so people are working on these kind of initiatives. I was actually very surprised. So yeah, I definitely see your point over there as well.
I think it's sort of like, how they say you don't get free alone. And I think that sort of really like taught me that you definitely don't get free alone. You have to have like sort of that community to care for or to be in, that teaches you a lot. I think you can't learn about yourself just by being, of course you can, there's some times when you enjoy isolation and solitude, but I think you learn about yourself in relation to others and the circumstances that you're in, those situations you're put in. And I think Fulbright really helps you with that, like I said.
Definitely. And I think just the fact that Fulbright brings you together with people from different parts of the world, and then you're sort of building a community with them. So it's such a therapeutic and wholesome experience. Definitely. Momina, I just have one last question, and I think we can probably take pe the questions
Yeah.
in chat box if we have time. But what sort of advice would you give to, Pakistani students and applicants who are sort of interested in applying to the Fulbright program and who are currently working on their applications for the 2025 cycle?
I think again ये थोड़ी abstract हो जाए शायद बात, but I think one thing that I've seen a lot is बहुत लाइफ एंड डेथ का मसला बन जाता है when I was in the same boat, so I will not claim moral high ground, but I think when you're applying for grad school and applying for it becomes like a life and death matter. Everybody is just like so stressed out, and I get it, of course I do, but I think ke, like the mindset that you should be going in while applying for the Fulbright program should be you're applying for the sake of it. You're not losing anything, like it doesn't cost to apply to the Fulbright program. Just apply to get through the process. That's what I tell everyone. And I don't know if that makes sense, but apply to just get through the process, because I feel like when I applied for Fulbright, I had already been applying to other places independently a couple of years before. And I realized when I was applying for the Fulbright, I was so well prepared because I had already gone through the process. I knew मैंने अपनी statement को किस तरह structure करना है, किस चीज को कहाँ लेकर जाना है. I just understood just the whole process of grad school applications, because it is a taxing process, like hum mane ya na mane, it is a very, very taxing process, just applying for grad schools. And, so I think the first time you're applying, just apply to get through the process. That will take the stress off, not entirely, but it will really help to see it as just a process. Enjoy it, enjoy the process of it, and not like essentially the outcome, will be according to the just like I just want people to see it as a process. That's it. And दूसरी चीज ये कि अपनी statements में, and I can't emphasize enough on that, just do some storytelling, please. Like, write about it like you are talking to a friend or a colleague जिसने आपकी life story सुननी है, and they want to know why you've come to this point where you want to apply for the Fulbright program. So just do some storytelling, like I feel like बहुत fragmented होती हैं जो बहुत ज़्यादा statements मैंने पढ़ी हैं. Like, of course आपने अपनी सारी credentials अंदर डाल दी हैं, which is great and all, and it might just get you an interview, but what makes you stand out is if you do some storytelling. You're actually telling your story. People are actually getting to know you. आपने simply एक बात नहीं share किया, आपने उसके पीछे अपना thought process, अपना experience, like what has your reflections you've added. So I think that is also one thing that I would advise them on. And I think honesty is very, very important. No need to stretch the truth, no need to fabricate stories. वो फौरन पता चल जाता है. I think just be honest with what you want, why you want it. Of course, there are some embellishments that you will have to do as part of the writing process and storytelling process. But I think honesty really, really would just get you far, in my personal opinion.
Definitely. And I think a lot of sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, most of the times, people kind of forget that every experience is sort of unique in its own way. It's just the
Yeah,
way that you project and you
I agree.
develop a narrative around that. I think that's such an important aspect when you're working on your applications that it's the narrative that matters the most, I think, at
I
the
think
end, like you mentioned.
just building upon what you've said, one thing I want to add is a lot of sometimes when people are applying for degrees that are not related to what they've studied, they get very like flustered ke humne to ye padha nahi hai, hamare paas experience nahi hai. And like you said, I think it's the narrative that you build. You don't have to use it against you. You have to use it for you. Be like, there of course there are. I studied economics and political science. Technically, I could say it didn't help me with my journalism degree, but that's not true. There's a lot of hundred other things that I learned during that process, during that journey, that can in some way help, where I was at when I was applying for my master's, right? And, just studying. But so I feel like use your experiences not against yourself, but for yourself. And I think that is the thing that a lot of people sometimes not struggle with. Just they don't know how to sort of go about it. So I think it would be best if you just use them for you, like usme kaun si cheez actually worked for you and you learn from it, and how you can sort of apply it while you're applying for your masters or writing your statement. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's all that I have for today. If let me just check and see if we have any questions related to your journey, because we have 5 more minutes left, and then we can conclude the session after that. Most of the questions are sort of related to the Fulbright degree application process, but I think maybe if you would like to comment on the idea of taking a gap before you apply for Fulbright, is that something that you're familiar with?
Yeah. So I actually
Yeah.
took a 3 year gap after my undergrad when I applied for the Fulbright. The idea was that I would apply right away after I'm done with my undergrad. But of course, life comes in the way. Sometimes, you're not ready. Sometimes you're trying to work. And for me personally, I wanted to see if I actually was interested in journalism and I wanted to work in the field to see, what it has to offer. And if it is just all like like this dream that I have in my head, if there's anything to it, right? Because I used to work in a student daily at my university, but nothing really after that. So I think honestly, it was great. I think I knew better about my research interests. They were a lot more refined. They were not just very academic at this point. They were also a little bit more professional. There was a lot of, I think they were a lot more personalized because we made it, they also, I was able to explore where my interests were coming from. Like I said, I come from a rural town, so that also played a part in that. So I think once you sit with whatever you're doing or whatever you've studied, you let it absorb, you let yourself absorb it a little bit, क्योंकि पढ़ते साथ ही अपने final year में apply कर रहे हो, there are a lot of things that have still not set in my personal opinion. I think you काम शाप कर रहे हो, gap ले रहे हो, so that really helped. And you can explore, and interdisciplinary वाली बात जो आपने की, I think that really, just the gap really helps with that. You can see how things are interlinked in the world, in the real life, and how you can sort of combine them all and maybe study something that is a little different from what you studied. So if that was the question, I think all honestly, I recommend people okay, you don't have to go right after. Just take 3-4 years for yourselves and then you can go. I feel like you're also better equipped to handle life in a new country and just you have to start from scratch. I think you're a lot more grounded that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's gap year is such a big taboo in Pakistan because most people just want you to move ahead with your life. So I think it's great that you've talked about how important it is sometimes to take a gap year and to, just figure out what your priorities are and
Yeah,
what your goals are.
I think because I'm detached हो जाते थोड़ा academic life से, and that really puts things in perspective, I guess.
Definitely, definitely. We just have one last question. So what I've sort of molded that question into more about what kind of techniques and strategies, what kind of, what kind of techniques or strategy would you recommend to students who are currently applying or preparing for their Fulbright applications? Just a few, because most people are trying to ask you about, your preparation, but you've already talked about that. But, just like concluding thoughts on what people could do to make sure that their application truly reflects their experiences.
I think honestly, I would tell everyone to focus more on their statements, study objectives and personal statement, and their letters of recommendation. Like reach out to your professors beforehand, or the people. Like for instance, for me, I had two people who were ready to write my recommendation letters, but one person I still had to figure out. And it was a whole process. I had to reach out to my professor. I had to go meet them. I had to remind them who I was, and then like have a conversation with them, and then they were able to write a better recommendation letter for myself. So I think, and recommendation letters, really, like good recommendation letters will actually make or break your application. So I think वो बहुत ज़्यादा important चीज़ है. And GRE, yes, of course, if you are applying for a STEM degree, but again, मेरी बहुत सारी, what I'm saying is coming from my own personal experience. But I think if you're going for a degree like mine, yes, GRE is important. It is also a Fulbright requirement. But at the end of the day, it is not essentially like आपका 340 आ गया या 330 आ गया. That's not going to really make or break your application. What is going to make or break your application is your letters of recommendation and honestly your statements. So I think बहुत सारे बच्चे ये करते हैं कि वो GRE की preparation में इतना time निकल जाता है that they're unable to really focus on their statements. So yes, while you should study for GRE, I'm not saying that, although I'm not really for standardized testing, but I think you should really prioritize your statements and your letters of recommendation. And आपकी statements ये हैं कि you won't necessarily be able to write it in a day or two. I know लगता है ऐसे है, but then वो बड़ी fragmented सी होती हैं. If you keep going back to them, give it एक चीज लिखो, break दो, keep going back to it with a fresh set of eyes, it just really then flows easily. It gels well together. So I think give it the time it requires. And for me personally, I like to go out of the way because मैं थोड़ा writer type. So I feel like I gave it like a month and a half. So मैंने उसको बढ़ा वो. But of course you can give it less time, but give it enough appropriate time. I think just don't like rush through the process of writing your statement, because that is literally their only way to get to know you, like who you actually are. अगर आपकी reflections उसमें added नहीं है, if it is not reflected who you are as a person, it's very hard to tell you apart from other candidates, I guess. So I think that's what I would say.
Sorry, I think there was a bit of a lag on my end. Sorry about that. I think that's all that we have for today. Thank you so much, Momina, for joining and talking to us about your Fulbright journey and your experience in the United States as a Fulbright scholar. It was a pleasure listening to you. If you guys have any sort of questions, just give me a minute. Yeah, if you guys have any sort of questions about today's session or any questions about US higher education in general, please reach out to your Education USA advisor. If you have not already, please register for our free advising services by visiting our website. Also, do not forget to keep following our EdUSA Pakistan social media pages to stay up to date on our events and happenings, and the USEFP social media pages for information on fully funded programs such as the Fulbright degree program. Again, Momina, thank you so much for answering all of our questions. It was wonderful listening to you and listening to you talk about, your experiences as a Fulbright scholar in the United States. And everybody, thank you so much for joining and participating today. We hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Momina.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.